Hi, everyone. Since we started chapter 9 this week, I thought that it would be useful to show you guys how you can also find the statistics and data that are reported by news and you basically see them all over the place at the beginning of each month. So in chapter 9, you will see that we'll learn how to define employment, unemployment. You will learn how to calculate unemployment rate, and then we will learn more about inflation rate, which is a pretty hot topic these days, obviously. And everything is more expensive. So I think that's the topic that everybody basically talks about these days. So in chapter 9, you will also learn more about inflation rate, how to calculate inflation rate, how basically the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which is in charge of calculating both the unemployment rate and inflation rate, basically how they report the numbers that we see on the news. So if you just Google Bureau of Labor Statistics or just write BLS, you should be able to find the website of Bureau of Labor Statistics. So this is a very big institution who is in charge of providing many data actually for us. So this is their official website. And if you scroll down on the right-hand side at the bottom, you can see the latest number. And remember, as you will also, of course, learn in chapter 9, that Bureau of Labor Statistics reports all these data at the beginning of each month. So they are basically super busy every month collecting all the information, all the data from the market. They bring it back to Bureau of Labor Statistics, do their math, use the formulas that you will also see in chapter 9 to provide all the information for us, okay? You will see, of course, when you study the inflation rate, that we use consumer price index or CPI to calculate inflation rate. So the important basically application of CPI, which also measures the consumer, which also consumers the cost, the living cost basically for us. The most application of that is for inflation rate. So consumer price index is nothing but the average of the prices of the different goods and services that we consume as a consumer. So the Bureau of Labor Statistics basically has this basket of goods and services. Inside the basket, we have shelter, we have housing, we have clothes, we have food, beverages, we have education, healthcare, transportation. So the Bureau of Labor Statistics keeps basically this basket and then collects all the prices for all the different items in the basket every single month. And with the formula that they have, that you will find it in chapter 9, they come up with all these numbers that you see here. And then they use the consumer price index to calculate inflation rate. Okay. Also, another important thing that the Bureau of Labor Statistics does is to calculate unemployment rate. Of course, when you study chapter 9, you will see that we have this group of people that they do not have a job, but they're not looking for a job. And we call them discouraged workers, because when we calculate the unemployment rate, we basically call a person unemployed when that person obviously doesn't have a job, but actively looking for a job. Okay, so that's a very important thing to remember when we are defining unemployed person, okay? And when we calculate the unemployment rate, we use the population of this group of people who are not working, but they're actively looking for a job because they want to finally get a job, okay? But we also have this big group of people sometimes, especially during recession times, that they do not have a job, but they just gave up. They don't want to look for a job, okay? They're taking a break from the job market, okay, from the labor market. So they are not counted in this 3.5% unemployment rate for last month, okay? So when my point here is Please be skeptical to with the numbers that you read and see, because obviously the actual unemployment rate in our country is higher than this 3.7% that you see here. Okay. Um, of course, oops, sorry. So of course, during recession times, you see higher unemployment rate, and at the same time, you might also find higher population for these discouraged worker groups, because some people, they just get tired of looking, not finding anything after a while, so they take a break. So the actual unemployment rate even during recession times might be even higher than that. Another reason that during especially recession times, the actual unemployment rate is typically greater than what you see on Bureau of Labor Statistics website is because of the part-time workers. When somebody works as a part-time, they are counted as employed. So they are not in the pool of unemployed people, obviously. But remember that during recession times, the number of part-time workers will increase because many people are laid off. They want to have a full-time job, but they can't. So they end up having a part-time job. So they basically are forced to work as a part-time workers. Okay, so the population of this group of workers actually will go up um, during recession times, and as a result, the unemployment rate will go down slightly during recession times. So be skeptical when you see the unemployment rate of 3.7%. Okay. I'm not saying that the actual unemployment rate is 10%. I'm not saying that, but it is definitely higher than 3.7%. Okay. And I was trying to also make a point, especially how you should look at the numbers during recession times. Okay. Another important piece of information that I want you to remember, and you will also see it in chapter 9, is about natural unemployment rate. So what is that? Typically in US, the unemployment rate when the economy is stable, when the economy is healthy, is 5%. We call that natural unemployment rate. Okay. So even when the economy is booming, growing, remember that the unemployment rate is never ever 0%. We still have some level of unemployment when unemployment rate when the economy is even when booming, when we are experiencing expansion in our business cycle. Um, so sorry, I was distracted by my phone. So we still have some workers that lose their job because of seasons, right? Like structural workers, right? We have some people that they just go to school, so they take a little break from the labor market. We do have jobs that are created and destroyed every single day in the labor market. So we will have some level of unemployment rate even when the economy is booming and we are at the expansion part of the business cycle. So for our country, during those times that everything is beautiful in the economy, we still have 5% unemployment rate, give it or take. But as you can see here, the unemployment rate right now, even if we consider that discouraged worker group that I was talking about, still the unemployment rate is below that 5%. Okay, I do not have the exact number, of course, for if we add the discouraged workers to the pool, but it might be slightly higher, but it is still less than 5%. So we are actually dealing with this kind of dilemma right now in our economy. That's why it's really tough for the Federal Reserve as a central bank of the United States to control the inflation rate these days. And we will learn more about, of course, Federal Reserve, how the Federal Reserve fights recession and recession and inflation in chapter 14 and chapter 16. But to give you a quick answer, as you can see, the number, especially for the unemployment rate, is very, very nice. Okay, 3.7% is below natural unemployment rate, showing us that people have job, they are making money, but that causes a problem. Because when we have money, we tend to spend that money, and spending more money will increase the prices. We learned it in chapter 3 when we talked about demand and supply, right? So people demand more goods and services. So we have a rightward shift in demand. And as a result, prices will go up even if the supply doesn't change. So that's why it is very, very, very difficult for Federal Reserve to control the inflation rate. So remember, we have this 5% for our natural unemployment rate, but right now the unemployment rate is 3.7%. And remember again that as long as we have jobs, we are going to demand more goods and services, and higher demand will definitely raise the price. But of course, you will learn later in chapter 16 that one way, and of course, you probably heard it in the news, that one way for the Federal Reserve to deal with this increase in price, which is inflation rate, is to increase the interest rate. Okay, we show it with a little I. Okay. Um, so when the Federal Reserve increases the interest rate, basically the Fed is trying to make borrowing more expensive for everybody because interest rate is the opportunity cost of borrowing money. So when the interest rate increases, basically the Federal Reserve doesn't want people to make big expenses. Like the Federal Reserve doesn't want you to buy a house right now. The Federal Reserve doesn't want you to buy a brand new car because again, it will inject money in the market, right? And pushes the prices to go up. So when the interest rate increases, the people have less desire to borrow money, to get a big loan, right? To make a big debt on their credit card because the interest rate is higher than before. So that's one way that the Federal Reserve, and that's the most effective way that the Federal Reserve tries to control the inflation rate. The good news is, however, the inflation rate is still high. We don't love it, right? And you will see, of course, in the at the second part of this chapter, you will learn more about inflation rate. But just keep in mind that the inflation rate, the targeted inflation rate by the Federal Reserve in the United States is 2%. Of course, now the inflation rate is between 4 to 5%. The good news is that last month in May, when all the numbers came out from Bureau of Labor Statistics and the Federal Reserve, the inflation rate didn't change much. And that's one biggest step towards reducing the inflation rate. So first you have to stabilize the prices so the inflation rate is more stable compared to last year this time, right? And hopefully with the Federal Reserve's actions, the inflation rate will go down eventually. But what does it mean for the job market? Um, Bad news is eventually the unemployment rate will go up. Some people will lose their jobs, unfortunately. And of course, the job market is kind of cooling off these days. After COVID, there was this big boom in the labor market. It is still booming, the labor market. You see tons of jobs opening, and the employers are still hiring, but it is kind of cooling off a little bit. Of course, we all, we have families, we have kids, we have expenses. So we definitely want to keep our jobs, right? But there is kind of a relationship, as you can see. The job market, if the job market cools down, it means that our demand will go down, right? And the prices will drop eventually. We don't want that to happen. That's why I started telling you that we are dealing with this dilemma, right? We want to make money, but we don't want to see higher prices. But there's always a cost. So when the Federal Reserve tries to control the prices, there will be eventually costs for everybody, right? One thing that the Federal Reserve and many economists are kind of concerned, of course, the Federal Reserve doesn't want to admit it, I'm just telling you that, is the possibility for having a recession, okay? Probably there were more talks about having a recession last year, but all the numbers for 2023 are very promising, and especially the economic growth is very promising. We will see economic growth throughout 2023. So I guess the recession is kind of out of the picture for this year, but you're taking an econ class, so always be skeptical. And I always tell my friends, my family, and even my students that try to be debt free. Okay. I know it's hard because you're a student, you're working mainly part time, saving is really hard. But if possible, don't have any debt in these type of situations. Okay. Again, all the numbers are promising, but you never know, right? So that's it. I thought to record this video to show you where the actual numbers can be found when you are learning about them, especially in chapter 9, and to kind of make a connection between what you're learning and what you see in real life. Okay. Hope you find it helpful and take care.